So there's been this conflict brewing between tradcons and the manosphere slash red pill. And this is in part because the people at the Daily Wire, a major conservative media outlet, Matt Walsh, Ben Shapiro, Andrew Klavan, etc., feel threatened, they feel competition, and they want to corner men's attention and support. Generally speaking, red pill slash manosphere slash MGTOW guys aren't interested in fighting for this country or the institution of marriage because of how derelict modern women are.
Dancing and singing and moving to the grooving, and just when it hit me, somebody turned around and shouted, "Play that funky music, white boy. Play that funky."
The manosphere is more decentralized and really has yet to take shape, but also figures like Charlie Kirk and Michael Knowles have already appeared on the Whatever podcast, which has been massively legitimizing. Both movements, tradcons and the red pill, are two expressions of men's collective interests. Tradcons will criticize transing young men, feminists, and other attacks on masculinity by the left, and make these general gestures toward patriarchy, while the red pill is concerned with double standards men increasingly face in daily life and the more practical concerns of dating and forming relationships, and is more willing to fully endorse patriarchy. And there's considerable overlap in these communities because men have a political consciousness, which is generally conservative, and dating issues and interests in their personal lives, and these two things reflect each other. Ultimately, as the mass sexual failure of our society deepens and pressures on men continue to grow, these two movements will converge. The tradcons will be forced to adapt and compromise in order to stay relevant. Probably we'll all be focusing on politics for the next couple of months to years, but eventually it will switch back. But anyway, let's see what the Daily Wire has to say.
It's interesting how the meaning of red pill has evolved over the last 5 years to essentially now mean I would say anti-woman. They would say pro-man, but I think it's far beyond pro-man. I think it's decidedly anti-woman in many ways. And you see people who, I think some of them are bad actors who are peddling, but then you also see people like Pearly Things who, I don't know Pearl. I don't know if she's a bad actor or not. I kind of get the sense that maybe she's just a naive person being kind of dragged along out of half desire to be famous and half probably hasn't read a book.
By and large, the manosphere is not anti-woman. I think there is a far fringe of woman haters that are there, but generally speaking, the manosphere is just anti-female insanity, anti-crazy women. And there do happen to be a lot of crazy women walking around this country these days. But on the whole, the manosphere is not anti-women in the sense that they intrinsically hate women for who they are. They're just reacting to the situation that we're in, which is a very dire one. It is one where women have been turned against men by the feminist movement. You go around and ask your average young woman, you say, "Do you need a man?" She says no. Does society need men? She says no. What does she think of men? Men are trash. Men are dogs. She's very bitter towards men, generally. She has this endless list of grievances.
Do we need men?
No.
Do we need men?
No.
Do we need men?
No.
No?
We don't need short men.
Do you need a man?
No.
Do you need a man?
Oh, God.
Do you need a man?
No.
Do we need men?
No.
Why?
No.
Do we need men?
No.
No? Do we need men?
We need men to make us stupid.
Do we need men? Do we need men? Do women need men in this world? Do we need men?
No.
Why?
Because we can be strong, independent women.
Do we need men?
Like, not necessarily, but like, if I can look at them, like, we need a man to look at.
Do we need men?
No.
No, why?
Nobody needs men.
Really?
We do not need men.
Why not? Why don't we need men?
Why would I need men?
So what can you get from someone else that you don't get from a man?
The only thing I can get from a man that I can't get anywhere else is dick.
Okay.
And I don't need dick.
Do we need women?
Yes,
We do. Why?
these women are awesome.
Do we need women?
Of course,
Why?
they're beautiful.
Do we need women?
Women make us feel compassionate and affectionate.
Do we need women?
Of course we do.
Do we need women?
Yes.
Why?
Because they're hot.
And what else?
They're hot.
Do we need women?
I mean, shit, unless they're gay.
We need women.
Do we need women?
Yeah.
Yes, who's gonna do my dishes?
And if women had stayed in their lane, were actually functioning in their divinely ordained role as they were supposed to, the manosphere wouldn't exist. We wouldn't have a problem with women.
But I do think it's this interesting question that is harder to talk about in one-on-one settings. It might be befit this format. Just to talk about what is the role of men and women, what is the role of marriage in a society that has essentially turned its back on the concept of marriage, that is legally encoded anti-man policies
and then
into our
abolish
legal
the
code.
definition of marriage. I mean,
Abolish the definition.
It's not anti-men. They've abolished difference.
The U.S. has not recognized any institution even remotely resembling the biblical definition of marriage since coverture laws were abandoned. Right. Same-sex marriage is not the only issue on which traditional Christianity and the American legal system currently disagree.
They've abolished the difference between men.
The distinction itself.
Yeah.
You know, I just went on the Whatever podcast.
Yeah.
For my, I think it's now my 28th hour on that show.
That was 6 hours.
After a 3-hour debate on the show. So I
That
did
was a separate thing?
Yeah, I did 9
So you
hours
did 9
basically
hours?
straight. Yeah.
Whoa.
But it was worth it.
How?
It was
Why?
great. It was great. I really love that show. I love it because
He got almost every question.
when I did it the first
You
time.
couldn't pay me. You pay me $1 million. I wouldn't.
No, I love it.
You couldn't pay me $1 million. You can really see how out of touch Matt Walsh is by making that comment here.
Because these poor girls, man, the whole thing with that show, which is why it's so funny, is you get
Hold on,
girls-
I'll pay you $10,000.
I mean, if you're really going to do it.
You're like 11. No, the thing with that show that makes it very funny is guys go on and they make fun of these girls who have OnlyFans who are like 18 and don't know anything. And then the guys completely destroy them. And then the girls look like dummies. And then the clip goes viral. And I felt it would be wrong to do that. I felt I might get a lot of views, but I might also burn in hell for eternity. And I thought about it for a moment. And then I thought, no, okay, I won't do it.
Why would Michael feel this way when the Bible repeatedly condemns women for being loose? It comes very hard down on sexually irresponsible women. The Bible understands human nature and it recognizes the lock key analogy. There is basically no condemnation of male promiscuity. You just can't sleep with a virgin without marrying her, basically. But it repeatedly goes after female promiscuity. Why? Because it understands that women gatekeep sex. We see sometimes this sort of trad simping with these trad cons. And now personally, I like Michael Knowles. I think he seems like a very genuine and nice guy. But the issue is, him and a lot of other trad cons sort of want to treat women as though they're these perfect, innocent angels, when they're not. They view them with these rosy glasses. Women have agency. They aren't moral agents in the same way men are moral agents, that much is true. But these trad cons exaggerate their paternalism, and then in the one area where women do have a lot of agency, and it is important that they behave in a responsible and disciplined way, they still want to let them off the hook, which is their sexuality. Michael Knowles is really saying he would feel bad for making fun of a woman who's showing her body all over the interwebs to distract men, young men, from their life purpose, from working to improve their lives and build civilization. That's feminist. This is like a freaking horseshoe.
So I go on there, and I just felt it's not these girls' fault. All of them have some weird family situation. None of them. We live in a culture that teaches them a ton of lies. They have no education. Even if they went to good schools, they have no education.
They still constantly engage in these rationalizations for their behavior, and they know what they're doing is wrong. Even if they had poor circumstances, they still know it's wrong.
So I felt, okay, let's just talk about what's really going on here. And they're victims of feminism, and the red pill guys are victims of feminism. And the irony about the red pill guys, I sympathize with them a lot of ways. The family courts are totally stacked against dudes. The culture promotes divorce and abolished the definition of marriage and blah, blah, blah. But the red pill guys are feminists. Their sense of men and women is basically this. Right. It's just that men and women are interchangeable.
Yes.
and go around, screw around, you owe nothing to women. If it's good for women, it's good for men. And that's just a lie.
I think this is a mischaracterization. I don't think people in the red pill say that men and women are interchangeable. On the contrary, I think they have been forced into the realization that they're not. Part of the frustration that you see in the red pill sometimes is men working through the fact that they've been lied to by the current feminist system that we live under.
The fundamental unit of society is actually not the individual.
Right.
I love individual rights. It's good to be an individual. The fundamental unit of society is the family. It's men and women together who have a love that becomes so real that you make more people.
Well, to have
organic communities and extended families, not the nuclear family. The leftists are technically right when they say it takes a village, but in reality, this is a patriarchal village.
With the red pill, and I've been in many altercations with the red. I've run afoul of the red pill crowd many times talking about these issues. And the question I've always had for them that they've never answered, and I'd love to hear an answer from any of them, is that, because I agree with 95% of their criticisms, as you point out, the family courts and how it's stacked against men and so on and so forth.
Again, another reminder, this conflict, quote unquote, is about competition. Matt Walsh is threatened by a decentralized network of internet influencers who he feels are potentially drawing from eyeballs on his segment on the Daily Wire.
What's the other option? Okay, we agree with all that. So then men should just be alone and give up on their bloodline and die, and their bloodline is extinguished. What you are suggesting is despair. You are telling men are already feeling despair. They're feeling meaninglessness. They're feeling lost. They're feeling alone. They're feeling like everything's stacked against them. And so your answer to them is, be in despair and then die.
Some waffle about bloodlines is not going to motivate most men. Now, it might motivate me, and that's because I, for my own reasons, am particularly concerned with not leaving this earth before I have blood children of my own that bear my own last name, but that's not going to motivate every man. This comment by Matt Walsh really does kind of reveal how he's just been ensconced in ideology and doesn't really understand how your average man on the ground feels and what they go through. His identity is just way too wrapped up in this political narrative for him to really get it. Although I will agree that there are some aspects of the red pill really more leaning into the black pill, which are very nihilistic and counterproductive.
And my point is that's just not an okay answer. That can't be the answer.
And have lots and lots of sex.
Well, but that's
sterile
that's
sex.
what you said.
Although not as much as a married man.
Right, exactly.
But this is what you were saying, is that's how it turns to the anti-woman.
Yeah.
Because it's not about the despair. The way that you find meaning is then by disparaging the people who have victimized you. Right? In any victim-victimizer sort of narrative, when there is no actual victim and victimizer, and it has to be sort of put together artificially, then the person who self-perceives as the victim is very likely to then strike out at the person who they perceive as the victimizer. And so for a lot of the red pill men who perceive the woman, the great woman, as the victimizer, the idea is that you lash out at women by having lots of sex with random girls and basically treating them like trash.
Your average man is the greatest victim of the Great Reset New World Order, and your average woman is its biggest cheerleader. Most men aren't sleeping with tons of women, and red pill rage, which I think Ben is describing here, is just a natural response to the raw deal that men have gotten, and to the bad deal that men have been dealt. Men eventually get over it and move on. The red pill provides a community for men to let them know that other men are in this with them.
And it's okay because they said that it's okay with them, but I've never understood the argument that it relieves you of responsibility for treating a woman well just because the woman has consented to be treated badly.
But he's right about the despair. This is permeating the right. It permeates the politics of the right. It's the idea is basically it's all over. They think of people basically, Ben, like you and me, as sitting on an ice floe, kind of floating out as the ice, melts away, because we're sitting around thinking about civil debate and, constitutional governance, and they think that's all over now. And their despair permeates the right. And I listen to a lot of these young guys, and they're talking about bringing back monarchy. They're talking about, their king. I know you look.
What? I didn't say anything. I didn't say anything.
But we had monarchy. It's not that great. It actually isn't. If you think our elections are bad, wait till you see the beheadings. Because that's how most of the kings of England were killed.
Yeah, I know.
First of all, Ben Shapiro and Andrew Klavan don't get it. Ben Shapiro is part of a naturally ultra-conservative, insular religious, ethno-religious community, and Andrew Klavan is just some old guy, so they're not going to be able to relate to 99% of men. And secondly, did God establish a democracy or a monarchy? Was Jesus elected by his apostles? I seem to be forgetting. Someone jog my memory.
Am I missing this? What is the red pill no marriage thing? I feel like I'm pretty in the...
Oh, yeah. No, it's a big
Am I missing? I feel like I've totally missed this.
Yeah, that's their whole position. They think that marriage is
what men are anti-marriage?
Well, yeah, that's the point. They shouldn't be, but it's...
Yes, they should be, Matt. We don't even have coverture in this country. American marriage, quote unquote, as recognized by the American government, is not real.
No, but he's right. This is true.
All the guys that pop up on our Twitter feed.
But tell me, I'm actually missing this.
Well,
I didn't know the marriage thing. I'm very pro-marriage.
Pearl made that argument.
Yes.
She made the argument men should not get married.
Okay.
Because the institution...
But are men listening to that? Like, are men saying that men shouldn't get married, or is that a woman saying that a man shouldn't get married?
Well, I think that there are examples of men saying it as well, but I think Pearl is sort of one of the prominent voices. A lot of the people...
But she's not married.
No.
Yeah, okay, so then that I think that's a huge thing, right? I mean, obviously, it's like listening to people that don't have kids tell you why you shouldn't have kids. Like it.
You do not need to be a 5-star chef to know that food tastes like crap. Now, I do think there are situations where people should get married or have some sort of long-term partner, but I can understand why a lot of men don't want to do that, especially because they can't find a woman who is worthy of being a wife and mother.
It doesn't really work, right? Because when you're telling them about what changes inside of you when you get married, and I think it's very easy to gravitate towards that. That is a feminist message, not to get married. And if her argument is, if your quarrel is with the courts, I could agree with you. Like, the courts have done tons of things that are awful that I disagree. I don't even agree necessarily with the courts taking marriage at all. It was a church thing, and they took it, and this is how we ended up with gay marriage rights, which I'm very much opposed to.
Well, I would say that a big part of the red pill thing that we would all probably agree with is they diagnose actual problems.
Right.
So when Pearl or other people in the movement come along and say, this is a major problem in society,
right,
I almost always agree with them.
Yeah.
It's when they get to the prescription that I think that it falls apart. The prescription being, lashing out at women generally or embracing despair or kind of nihilism.
It's a feminist message. I mean, that is fundamentally to be anti-family. I don't understand how you could identify as a conservative at all.
The red pill is not fundamentally anti-family. They are anti-family under the conditions that we are in. Biblically speaking, and these people are supposedly Bible-believing tradcons, a woman is no longer qualified for marriage if she is not a virgin.
Because everything that the left is trying to do, every Marxist principle, every feminist principle is about disrupting, the family unit. It's what connects everything from the climate change lobby to don't have kids, the planet's going to die, to feminism, be like men, we should be like men. It's all a disruption of the family unit. And if you are now arguing in favor of something that's fundamentally Marxist, then you have to examine whether or not you're conservative at all. That would be my pushback on that.
What we're trying to
I haven't heard any men say that they're anti-family. Maybe I need to just...
No, I have.
I don't want to give them press because they're all jerks to me online.
Okay.
But there are a handful of these guys. And the irony of it is they put themselves out there to be these big, virile, pinnacles of masculinity. But their anthropology is fundamentally, for lack of a better word, gay.
Wanting to sleep with a ton of women is gay. Okay, Michael.
Right. Their anthropology is fundamentally sterile. And it's saying, yeah, we shouldn't get married, we shouldn't have kids, we should just have sterile relations with random women. And so it's kind of how the irony that, we end up at the topic that no one's allowed to name anymore that Matt made a movie about. And, people say, well, that's so crazy, we should dial that back. But that's just a consequence of the very same sexual revolution that has said for many decades now that men and women are exactly the same, which comes from feminism, right? So
horseshoe theory.
Totally, yeah. I mean, it's the logical conclusion of Gloria Steinem is these red pill bros, and they don't even realize it.
It is a byproduct and not a logical conclusion. Men are independent and ultimately still the ones who have the capacity to impose standards, healthy standards on the rest of society and rebuild civilization.
Well, I'm radically pro-marriage.
What I run into a lot, I mean, whether these people identify as red pill or not doesn't really matter. But when I talk about marriage on my show, and I promote it, and I talk about my own experiences with marriage, I hear all the time. I mean, the comments are full of people who are conservative who are saying, "Well, that's just your experience. That's a you got lucky. You have it easy."
Yes.
And so you're trying to trick men into this deal that isn't going to work for them just because you happen to find a good woman.
What percentage of marriages fail again in this country? Can someone look that up for me? And what percentage of those marriages that do fail are initiated by women? I seem to be forgetting. I think it's 50-50, 70-30, respectively. Seems like Matt Walsh needs a reminder or two.
And that's the kind of defeatist mentality. I hear it all the time, all the time. And what I want to say to these men is like, it's an easy way to dismiss it, but we're all married in this room. We're all happily married. So we didn't get lucky. It's like you have to work at it every single day. It's a choice that you make. And there's a lot of women out there who are looking to make that choice also.
Who are desperate and about to hit the wall? Those women who want to make this choice? Are these women who are crashing into the wall like Wile E. Coyote into a painted-on tunnel on the face of a rock? Good partners, Matt?
So it's very easy to just kind of dismiss.
It's also to get back to Drew's point, actually. So I'm going to back your point before you back your own. So the real question is why that's arising on the right. You understand why that revolutionary movement exists on the left. I mean, Kant has spelled it out. It is fundamentally a Marxist movement that seeks to destroy the institution of marriage in order to level all of society so that you can build up, based on the ashes, some sort of weird scrap heap of new creation. But the question is why that's happened on the right. And this is where I agree with Drew, is that because the right, and this goes back even to some of the Taylor Swift points that you were making earlier about why the right is getting Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce wrong, just imagistically. Yep. I mean, I now agree with everything you said about Taylor Swift, but the reason that that's happening is because since every institution has now been fundamentally taken over by the left, or at least that's the belief of the right. If you extend that to every institution, that extends even to like the most important institutions, right? The right is looking and they're saying every institution that we once relied upon wrested out of our control, including things like church, right? Things that were very fundamental to our lives, wrested out of our control and then militarized against us. And so that's sort of the argument that the red pillars are making. What they're saying is that the institution of marriage was wrested out of our control and then perverted and used against us. In the same way that they're arguing that about the government, or arguing that about the church, or arguing that about the universities or the press. And the problem is that when it comes to marriage, because it's so personal and because in the end, there is no substitute for it, you can't just despair of the institutions and say build a giant alternative in the way, and like you have to actually do the thing that conservatives really should be doing in nearly all of these modes, which is seize control of the institutions back.
And conservatives truly seizing control of the institution of marriage looks like coverture laws at least. The best we can hope for realistically is probably just some minor tweaks or maybe even an overhaul of the court system, but we probably won't even get that, realistically speaking.
So what the big debate that's happening right now on the right is, can we do that with these institutions, or do you burn them to the ground? And it differs institution by institution, right? I think most of us in this room would say, like, the university system, go ahead and burn it to the ground. Or the legacy media, go ahead and burn it to the ground. But when it comes to the institution of marriage, you can't burn it down. That's not something you can burn down.
Well, it's not an institution invented by man, for one thing.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so you actually have
you can burn it, but you burn civilization with it.
Exactly. And so I think that what's happened is a broad category error that the right has made in being anti-institutionalist broadly. You're starting to see the most right-wing edges of the right wing say, well, that includes all institutions.
Yeah, and for men's interests to flourish, we need true biblical patriarchy to be reestablished, as it is described in the Old Testament. But of course, if you advocate for that, you're sidelined and considered part of the lunatic fringe. So, anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please share this video because that is the #1 way you can support this channel, and Red Channels will catch you in the next one.